Thank you for clicking on this video. I know that might sound like a small thing, but it isn't. Not to me. For a long time, I believed I didn't deserve to be heard. I believed that my story didn't matter, that my pain was insignificant, that maybe I'd brought it all on myself. When you're told often enough that you're the problem, you start to believe it. But sharing these stories, reading your comments, knowing that people actually listen, makes my day. Please subscribe if these stories resonate with you. Now, let me tell you about the day I woke up in the ICU and heard my husband planning my funeral before I was even dead. My name is Catherine Walsh. I'm 54 years old now, but this story starts when I was 50 in the summer of 2019, when I lived in Minneapolis with my husband of 27 years, Robert Walsh. We'd met in college at the University of Minnesota. He was studying accounting, I was studying nursing. We were both practical people from practical Minnesota families where you worked hard, didn't complain, and built a solid life. Robert seemed like the perfect partner for that kind of life. Reliable, stable, sensible. We got married in 1992, bought a house in the Longfellow neighborhood, had 2 kids. Sarah was born in 1994, Michael in 1997. I worked as a nurse at Abbott Northwestern Hospital. Robert became a CPA, eventually starting his own small firm with 2 partners. It was a good life, or it looked good from the outside. The truth, the part I didn't talk about, was that the marriage had been slowly dying for years. Robert and I barely spoke anymore beyond logistics. Who was picking up groceries? When were the kids coming home for holidays? What bills needed to be paid? We hadn't slept in the same room in 5 years. He'd moved to the guest bedroom, claiming my snoring kept him awake, and neither of us had suggested he move back. We weren't fighting. We weren't passionate. We just existed in parallel. 2 people living in the same house but occupying different worlds. I'd thought about divorce, thought about it seriously. But every time I came close to bringing it up, I'd talk myself out of it. The kids, even though they were adults now. The house, the shared finances, which were complicated by Robert's business. The sheer exhausting logistics of untangling 27 years of combined life. And honestly, the fear. I was 50 years old. I'd been with Robert since I was 23. I didn't know how to be alone. The idea of starting over at this age, of dating, of building a new life from scratch, it terrified me more than staying in a marriage that made me feel lonely, even when he was in the room. So I stayed, and I told myself it was fine. We were companionable, respectful. Many marriages became friendships eventually, right? This was just what long-term partnership looked like. I was wrong. It wasn't friendship. It was indifference. And indifference, I would learn, can be far more dangerous than hate. I started feeling sick in June. At first, I thought it was just exhaustion. I'd been working extra shifts at the hospital. We were short-staffed, and I'd always been the person who said yes when they needed coverage. I was tired all the time, had headaches, felt vaguely nauseous. I figured I was burning out. But then other symptoms started. Dizziness, confusion. I'd be in the middle of checking a patient's vitals and suddenly forget what I was doing. I'd walk into a room and forget why I'd gone there. Words would escape me mid-sentence. "You okay?" my colleague Brenda asked one day after I'd spaced out during a conversation. "Just tired," I said automatically. "You've been just tired for weeks, Kath. Maybe you should see a doctor." "I am a doctor, sort of." "You know what I mean. A doctor. Get some blood work done." I promised I would, but then I'd get home and collapse on the couch and forget to make the appointment. Robert barely noticed. We'd see each other in passing, him leaving for work as I got home from a night shift, or vice versa. Sometimes we'd be in the kitchen at the same time, making our separate meals, and he'd nod at me like I was a roommate he was vaguely familiar with. July got worse. The headaches intensified. I started having trouble seeing clearly. My vision would blur around the edges. I felt like I was constantly on the verge of passing out. I finally made a doctor's appointment. Dr. Hassan, my primary care physician, ran blood tests and told me everything looked normal. Maybe it was stress, she suggested. Maybe I should take some time off work. I cut back on hours. It didn't help. August 15th, I collapsed at work. I was checking on a post-op patient, a man who'd had knee surgery that morning. I leaned down to look at his IV line, and the room tilted. The next thing I knew, I was on the floor, and Brenda was yelling for help. They admitted me to the ER. I worked there. It was surreal being on the other side, being the patient instead of the nurse. They ran tests, CT scan, MRI, more blood work. Hours passed in a blur of machines and worried faces and forms to sign. Robert showed up around hour 3. I'd called him from the ER, and he'd said he'd come as soon as he could leave work. He walked in looking annoyed, like this was a major inconvenience. "What's going on?" he asked. "They're running tests. I collapsed." "Are you okay?" "I don't know yet. That's why they're running tests." He sat in the chair beside my bed and pulled out his phone, scrolling through emails. We didn't talk. I lay there with an IV in my arm and my husband 5 feet away. And I'd never felt more alone. Dr. Morrison came in around 7 p.m. He was a neurologist, early 40s, with the kind of serious face that told you the news wasn't going to be good. "Mrs. Walsh," he said, "we found something on your MRI." My heart stopped. "What?" "You have a brain tumor. It's in your frontal lobe, about 4 centimeters. It's causing pressure and swelling, which explains your symptoms." The words didn't make sense. Brain tumor. Me? I was 50 years old. I was healthy. I didn't smoke, barely drank, exercised regularly. This happened to other people, not me. "Is it cancer?" I heard myself ask. "We'll need a biopsy to know for sure. But based on the imaging, we believe it's a grade 3 astrocytoma. That's a type of malignant glioma. Malignant, cancer, brain cancer." "What's the treatment?" Robert asked. He sounded calm, clinical, like Dr. Morrison had just told us we needed a new water heater. "Surgery to remove as much as possible, followed by radiation and chemotherapy. But I need to be honest with you. This type of tumor is aggressive. Even with treatment, the prognosis is generally 2 to 5 years. 2 to 5 years? I was going to die. Maybe not tomorrow, but soon. Sooner than I'd ever imagined. "We'll need to do the surgery as soon as possible," Dr. Morrison continued. "The tumor is causing significant pressure. Every day we wait increases the risk of serious complications." They scheduled surgery for 3 days later, emergency neurosurgery. They'd go in through my skull and try to remove the tumor. There were risks: infection, bleeding, stroke, permanent brain damage, death on the operating table. I signed consent forms with shaking hands. Robert drove me home that night. We didn't talk. When we got to the house, he went to his room and I went to mine, and I lay in bed staring at the ceiling thinking, I'm dying, and my husband couldn't even hold my hand. I called the kids. Sarah cried. Michael went silent. They both said they'd come home before the surgery. I told them they didn't have to, but Sarah said, "Mom, of course we're coming. Don't be ridiculous." The 3 days before surgery were strange. I went through the motions of normal life while knowing nothing would ever be normal again. I organized things, made lists of passwords and account information, wrote letters to the kids, just in case. Robert continued going to work. Life went on around me while I prepared to die. The morning of surgery, August 18th, Sarah and Michael were both there. They came to the hospital with me and Robert. We sat in pre-op, and they held my hands and cried, and Robert stood in the corner checking his phone. "Dad," Michael said at one point, "can you put that away?" "I'm dealing with a client emergency," Robert said. Mom's having brain surgery. I know that, Michael, but life doesn't stop just because your wife has cancer. Sarah's voice was sharp. Yeah, actually, it kind of does. Robert put the phone away, but he looked resentful about it. They wheeled me to surgery. The last thing I remember before the anesthesia took me under was thinking, if I die on this table, my last memory of my husband will be him being annoyed that I disrupted his workday. I didn't die on the table. The surgery lasted 8 hours. They removed most of the tumor, but not all of it. Some had grown into areas they couldn't reach without causing severe brain damage. Dr. Morrison said the surgery had gone as well as could be expected. I woke up in the ICU with a bandage around my head and pain unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But I was alive. The ICU was loud, machines beeping, alarms going off, nurses moving constantly. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Sometimes Sarah was there, or Michael. Sometimes I was alone. I don't know how long I'd been awake. An hour, 2, when I heard Robert's voice. He was outside my room in the hallway. I could hear him clearly through the partially open door. He was talking to someone, a woman. Her voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. I just don't know how long I'm supposed to keep doing this, Robert was saying. He sounded exhausted, frustrated. You're doing great, honey, the woman said. This is so hard for you. Honey, the doctors are saying 2 to 5 years. 2 to 5 years of this. Chemotherapy, radiation, her getting sicker. I don't think I can do it, Linda. Linda, my brain, foggy from surgery and pain medication, took a moment to place the name. Linda Carter, one of Robert's business partners, divorced around my age. I'd met her at a few office parties. She'd always seemed nice enough. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, Linda said softly. I'm her husband. People expect. People don't matter. Your happiness matters. There was a pause. Then Robert said, She's probably going to die anyway. The doctor was pretty clear about that. It's just a matter of when. My heart monitor started beeping faster. I could hear it, could hear my own pulse accelerating as the words sank in. She's probably going to die anyway. Have you thought about what happens after? Linda asked. Of course I have. I can't stop thinking about it, about finally being free, about us. Us. The house is in both our names, Robert continued. I've been looking into it. When she dies, it comes to me. Plus, her life insurance through the hospital. That's $500,000. Her retirement account. We could sell the house, use the money to buy something together, start over. That sounds wonderful. Linda's voice was warm, intimate. You deserve to be happy, Robert. After everything you've been through, everything he'd been through, I was lying in an ICU bed with part of my skull removed, and he was the victim. I'm thinking we should probably wait a few months after, Robert said. You know, to make it look appropriate. But then we could go public, get married. I'd like that, Linda said. I'd like that a lot. They were planning our future, my death and their marriage, all in one conversation outside my ICU room. What about the kids? Linda asked. What about them? They're adults. They'll deal with it. Sarah seems pretty attached to her mom. She'll get over it. People do. Life goes on. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip the IV out of my arm and storm into the hallway and confront them both. But I couldn't move. The surgery had left me weak, and the pain medication made everything feel distant and slow. I should go back in, Robert said. Make it look good. Play the concerned husband. Call me later, Linda said. I love you. Love you too. I heard them kiss. Then footsteps. Then Robert walked back into my room. I had my eyes closed, pretending to be asleep. Through my eyelashes, I watched him look at me. There was no love in his expression, no concern, just calculation, like he was looking at a problem he was waiting to solve itself. He sat down in the chair beside my bed and pulled out his phone. I lay there pretending to be unconscious, and I thought, he wants me to die. My husband of 27 years is counting down the days until I'm dead so he can marry his mistress and spend my life insurance money. How long had this been going on? How long had he and Linda been together? Months? Years? Had he been cheating on me the whole time I'd been getting sick, or had the cancer just given him a convenient excuse to check out emotionally? Did it matter? I spent 2 days in the ICU before they moved me to a regular room. Sarah and Michael came every day. Robert came too, playing his role perfectly. He'd sit beside my bed, hold my hand when the kids were there, ask the doctors questions about my prognosis and treatment plan. To anyone watching, he looked like a devoted husband. But I knew the truth. Every time I looked at him, I heard his voice in the hallway. She's probably going to die anyway. I didn't tell the kids. What would I say? Your father is having an affair and planning his next wedding while I'm in the hospital? They didn't need that. Not yet. Not while I was this sick. I was discharged after a week. Robert drove me home. The kids had both gone back to their lives. Sarah to her job in Chicago, Michael to finish his last semester of grad school in Boston. It was just Robert and me again. He set me up in the living room, brought me water and medication, made sure I had everything I needed. Then he went to work. I heard his car pull out of the driveway and sat there in the silent house, alone with my tumor and my IV pain medications, and the knowledge that my husband was a stranger. Chemotherapy started 2 weeks later. Radiation would come after. The treatment was brutal. Nausea, exhaustion, hair loss, cognitive issues. I'd been a nurse long enough to know what to expect, but knowing didn't make it easier. Robert played caretaker when the kids called or visited, but when it was just us, he barely looked at me. He'd make meals and leave them in the refrigerator. He'd drive me to appointments, but wait in the car. He was fulfilling his obligations as a husband without actually being present. And he was seeing Linda. I knew, because I'd check his phone when he was in the shower. Text messages, carefully, worded but obvious if you knew what to look for. Thinking about you. Can't wait to see you again. This will all be over soon. I was dying, and my husband was having a love affair and counting down until he could collect my life insurance. I probably should have been angrier, but mostly, I just felt sad. Sad for the 27 years I'd wasted on a man who'd never really loved me. Sad for the person I'd been at 23, so eager to build a life with someone who'd seen me as a convenience rather than a partner. But under the sadness, something else was growing, something harder, a determination to not give him what he wanted. If Robert thought I was just going to die quietly and leave him everything, he was wrong. I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer in October. Her name was Patricia Nguyen, and she had a reputation for being ruthless. I liked her immediately. I told her everything, the affair, the conversation I'd overheard in the ICU, the text messages. She listened without interrupting, taking notes. "Do you want to file for divorce?" she asked. "Yes." "Even though you're sick? Even though you're going through treatment?" "Especially because of that. I'm not going to let him sit there playing the martyr husband while planning his next marriage, and I'm definitely not leaving him my life insurance and retirement account." Patricia smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Okay, let's burn his world down." We filed for divorce in November. Robert was served papers at his office. He came home that night looking shell-shocked. "What the hell is this?" he asked, waving the papers. "It's a divorce petition," I said calmly. I was sitting on the couch, bald from chemotherapy, wearing a sweater that hung off my shrinking frame. But I'd never felt stronger. "You're filing for divorce now?" "Yes." "Katie, you're sick. You're not thinking clearly. The tumor, the medications. My brain is fine. Well, as fine as it can be with cancer. But my memory is excellent. I remember everything I heard in the ICU. His face went pale. What are you talking about? You and Linda, planning my funeral, talking about how you'd finally be free, how you'd use my life insurance to buy a house together. He opened his mouth, closed it. No denial came. You were awake? He finally said. I was awake. Katie? Don't try to explain or apologize or tell me I misunderstood. I heard you. I know what you've been doing, and I'm not going to die knowing that you get everything while I get nothing. This is vindictive. Yes, it is. The divorce was ugly. Robert fought me on everything. He claimed I was mentally incompetent due to the brain tumor. He tried to get my lawyer removed. He dragged out every proceeding, trying to wait me out, hoping I'd die before the divorce was finalized. But I didn't die. The treatment was working, not curing me, but holding the cancer back. Dr. Morrison was surprised. Your body is tougher than we expected, he said. I'm not done yet, I told him. I have things to finish. The divorce was finalized in March 2020. I got the house, half of Robert's retirement accounts. My own life insurance and retirement stayed mine. I changed the beneficiary to my kids. Robert got his business and his freedom. And Linda, I guess. They announced their engagement 2 weeks after the divorce was final. The email invitation somehow ended up in my inbox. I deleted it. I lived longer than the doctors expected. The 2 to 5 year prognosis stretched to 3 years, then 4. The tumor was still there, still growing slowly, but the treatment was holding it at bay. I was alive. I'm still alive. It's been 5 years now. I'm 55. I still have cancer. I probably always will have cancer until it finally kills me. But I'm here, living in my house in Minneapolis, seeing my kids regularly, spending time with friends I'd neglected during my marriage. I don't work anymore. The treatments make that impossible. But I volunteer at a support group for brain cancer patients. I tell them my story. I tell them to fight, to not give up, to not let anyone decide their worth or their future. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Robert and Linda got married. They live in a condo downtown. I don't think about them often. They're not worth the energy. What I think about instead is this. I survived, not just the cancer, though that's part of it. I survived a marriage that was slowly killing me in a different way. I survived being invisible to someone who promised to love me. I survived hearing my husband plan my funeral while I was still breathing. And I took my life back, changed the story, refused to be the convenient dead wife who left everything to her grieving husband. The cancer will probably kill me eventually. I'm not in denial about that. But Robert doesn't get to benefit from it. He doesn't get my money or my house or the satisfaction of playing the tragic widower. He gets nothing from me. Nothing except the knowledge that I heard him that day in the hospital hallway. And I fought back, and I won. That's my victory. Not survival, though that's part of it. My victory is that I took control of my own ending. I'm writing my own story instead of letting him write it for me. I'm still here, and every day I'm here is a day he doesn't get what he wanted. That's enough.